Today, I want to answer a really important question that I get asked a lot. How do I know when I am ready to take the official GMAT? This is a surprisingly difficult question to answer sometimes. Having said that, most people wonder it at some point, so we figured it would be helpful to address it and, at the very least, help you think through what's going to be best for you. So let's dive in. We'll work from the most ideal scenario to the least ideal scenario. There's a wide variety of situations in which taking an official exam can make sense, and ultimately, it's a simple probability calculation. How strong is my data, and therefore, how reasonable is my prediction that I will score where I want to? Quick caveat here. How often are conditions perfect? Maybe 20% of the time at best. So all of this is a gradient of certainty rather than an absolute goal or absolute standard because we're usually balancing deadlines, other commitments, and our own challenges with the exam itself. So having said all that, if you're the type of person who likes having a clear goal and a lot of structure, then the following can help you make good decisions, or at the very least, be thoughtful about the decisions that you're making. The number one most ideal situation is that you've seen your goal score on three consecutive practice exams. Again, knowing when to take the exam is essentially a probability calculation. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to predict with 100% certainty when you'll hit your score because there are a lot of human factors in the situation, such as sleep, diet, exercise, stress, and some other factors that might be even less predictable than those. But even with all that said, this is the strongest data that I've personally seen. Usually, when you're hitting your goal score on more than three consecutive practice tests, is the time where you start to see people become a little bit overconfident. In fact, some people can become overconfident after seeing one practice exam at their goal score, or even just a strong step in the right direction, and they end up working less hard. They end up backsliding. And perhaps, obviously, none of us want to be in that situation or really be that type of person. But it is a totally natural human reaction to success. And if you want some help protecting yourself and insulating yourself against some of those natural instincts, if you're prone to that kind of thing, then we've got episodes way back in the feed from, I think, February of 2024, give or take a couple months, where I talk about how to become more disciplined, how to become more consistent, and how to score higher on the new GMAT through better attention to detail. All of those can really benefit you if you're worried about backsliding or you've found yourself backsliding in the past. Having said that, fewer than three consecutive practice exams, and it's hard to know how much of a role luck is playing in the situation versus skill. I found a really good analogy for this situation in a principle that I learned from Ray Dalio, who is the founder of the world's largest hedge fund. A very polarizing guy. Some people like him, some people don't like him, but he has published some great books. I definitely recommend them. They're not necessarily going to help you a lot on the GMAT, but they could help you a lot in becoming like a, let's just say, more skilled professional, more knowledgeable professional, which could for sure help you in the study process. So it's not a strong recommendation, but I do think you'll probably enjoy them if you check them out. But he has a lot of decision-making frameworks, perhaps. Obviously, he's a professional investor, one would hope, that are worth looking into. But one that I like to use is that he likes to say you want to trust people who've done the thing they're talking about successfully at least three times. You can still get valuable input from other people, and he does. They have a really, really interesting system at Bridgewater, I think is the name of his company. But to engage with people who have not done something successful three times in a row, you want to assign what he, I think, calls a believability score or a believability adjustment. And you kind of just downgrade how much you're willing to believe what they're saying, because it's not that they're bad people. It's just they don't have the same level of experience that someone who's done something three times in a row has done. And again, with less than three times, it's a little hard to tell whether this person was just in the right place at the right time. Did they just have the right connection? Or maybe being in the right place at the right time and having the right connections is part of their skill set. And like they can repeatably do that kind of thing, that's worth considering. So obviously kind of getting a little bit off topic here with that, but I thought it was a good analogy for believing yourself in terms of your own readiness for the exam That I think is the ideal situation. So you can give yourself, if you want to, a trust score of how much you trust yourself to perform well on test day. And that could be good for all kinds of preparation now that I think about it. If you could give a certain presentation three times in a row without making a mistake or feeling like you're giving it your best and it's coming across the way that you want it to come across, then the odds are high that you'll be able to deliver when it counts. Now, there's always going to be outliers. We'll talk about that as we go through the other situations. And there's also always going to be people who are right the first time and then every time after that. So you didn't need that like three times in a row to validate. There's going to be luck. There's going to be high rates of learning. Like if you hear Mark Zuckerberg talk about hiring, I mean, he doesn't always hire the person with the most experience. Sometimes he just hires the person who he believes has a high rate of learning. And like, look at what he did. Like he was 19 when he started. I don't even know if that was his first company, but when he started what would become his most successful company. Um, and like he was a 19-year-old kid, he didn't exactly have a lot of experience. He certainly didn't have a track record of doing it right three times. So there's all kinds of other factors, and it's worth at least considering those. But if you're really not sure what your goal should be and you're early in this process or you're starting to feel a little bit lost of like, when am I going to be ready? Then I would recommend setting a goal to hit your goal score on three consecutive practice tests. And I think that's a really good, really high bar to set for yourself that will keep you from being disappointed on test day to the maximum extent that we can even control that. Again, there's probably going to be things that are going to be either impossible or at least very, very difficult to control. But in terms of the things you can control, I think that is the ideal to shoot for. Now, the next most ideal situation is having seen your goal score on three practice exams, just not in a row, meaning there could be like a score drop in there somewhere, but overall, you've hit the score you want to see on test day three times. This is still pretty strong data because in most situations, that would lead you to believe that it's more likely than not that you'll see a score that you're happy with on the official test. Having said that, you'll want to know that there's a reasonable possibility that you'll have to take the exam again. And that's because there's all these other factors like that we've discussed, like diet, sleep, exercise. Some of you are going to be able to control how well you sleep the night before the exam. Some of you just won't. And you've never been a great sleeper or anything in between. And you just want to do your best. You just want to do your best with that. And I'll have some recommendations for that a little bit later. Having said all that, and I will probably say that phrase a million times today, if you're really committed to taking the exam only one time, then you might want to delay in order to get that goal of three times in a row. For certain types of you, that's going to be worth it. And for other types of you, you're like, whoa, that's crazy. Like that's way too like uptight or type A, whatever. That's fine. That's fine. I'm just giving you the rundown here, helping you think through what is going to be the best situation for you personally and sharing some of my advice, having done this for a very, 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 very long time with like probably at least 10,000 data points at this point. So for most people, I would say this situation of having seen the goal score three times, even if it's not sequentially, is probably good enough for you to be happy or at least satisfied with what you see on test A. But it's really a personal choice. Going back to what I was just saying a moment ago, you'll want to weigh the cost of more study with the potential benefit of that last maybe 20 to 30 points, give or take. Sometimes it's worth it, other times it's not. And you might have to look into the mirror a few times or maybe a lot of times, like I did back in the day, many, many days or many days in a row, and really ask yourself, is this still worth it? And maybe you're the only person who can really answer that at the end of the day. But obviously, people can help you answer it. So if you don't know how to make that decision, a very simple thing you can do to make it easier to make is just write down all the priorities in your life. Most of us are going to have at maximum 10 priorities at any given time in our life. It's probably more like five, maybe 5 to 10. And put the GMAT in there. And whatever's higher than GMAT, say yes to that and say no to GMAT when those two things conflict. And whatever's lower than GMAT, say no to those things when that conflicts with GMAT study time. It really is that simple. Keep it that simple, and it will be not easy to prioritize, but you'll at least always know what your priorities should be, which is the first step toward executing well on those priorities, which of course is the thing that gets results. Now, again, I already talked about this. If you have trouble executing, we've got a bunch of great episodes for you. I think starting with the discipline one is probably the best place to start there. Good thing to remember is this is a temporary situation. You are not going to be studying for the GMAT for the rest of your life. And you can have all those other lower than GMAT priorities back on the weekends while you're studying, if you have that kind of flexibility. And you can have them back when you're done, but not before. Don't be fooling yourself thinking you're going to just totally not prioritize well and still get some crazy good result. That's absurd. None of us should be thinking like that. And certainly no business people should be making decisions with that kind of rationale. It's just all kinds of bad stuff comes from that. So that's kind of like the top two most ideal situations. Getting into the next most ideal situation would be that you've seen your goal score 1 to 2 times. Like it has happened. You've proven that it is at least possible for you to hit the goal score on an official practice test. And I'm going to assume we're talking about official practice tests. I probably should have brought that up sooner. I apologize, but better late than never. The official practice tests use real retired GMAT questions and the real scoring algorithm. Same exact scoring algorithm that you'll have on test A. GMAC, the people who make the GMAT, do not publish the specific details of that scoring algorithm. And so third-party providers do make very good simulations. It's very difficult to simulate the GMAT scoring algorithm, but some people do it well. Well, having said that, there's nothing like the real thing, and all those other scores are just score estimates. And so you want to be able to know, like, hey, I hit this on the real scoring algorithm, like I can do this. Ideally, you have that data that proves it to you, not just a feeling that you feel like you're capable of doing it, but like, hey, right there, you can see it. I did it. It's possible. Now, quick point. I think it's super thrilling the first time that you see your goal score. It's a big deal. I honestly don't even think it gets acknowledged enough in the space, like how important a lot of this stuff is for a lot of you. I know for some of you, you're just kind of like checking it out, seeing how it goes. That's cool too. But for a lot of us, this is like a lot riding on this situation, like where our kids are going to go to school in the future, kind of stuff. Maybe that's important to you. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But to me, that's a big deal. So definitely enjoy that milestone. It's an awesome win. But fairly quickly, let's say at most after 24 hours, start taking serious inventory of what you need to do to repeat that. That should very, very quickly, after the sort of high of like, okay, I can do this. This is great. Like 24 hours to celebrate, I think is a good rule of thumb. And then it is back to business on a hardcore level. Because in general, I think it's good to expect that it's going to take more energy to sustain at a high level than it will take to get there. I know that's a little counterintuitive, and perhaps obviously that is not true all the time. It is just not true all the time. But the expectation will help you get what you ultimately want with a much higher level of probability, which is your goal score on test day, not just a practice exam. And that is the goal of our work together, is to make sure this actually happens when it counts. And so I have personally benefited from that advice that I got from a very, very successful person. And he said, don't expect that just doing what you've always been doing is going to keep generating the same level of results. Even if that is technically true, don't tell yourself that. It is much safer to err on the side of like, okay, let me really break down the list of what are the key behaviors that I did well that I want to keep doing over and over again, and not just give in to that very natural desire to feel like, oh, I've arrived. I'm good. I'm good. I got it. I saw the score. Like it's definitely going to happen on test day. If that's the way that you perform best and you're seeing results with that, great, do that. That's great. I just wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend it generally. So to crystallize this for you, I would recommend writing down the top 3 behaviors that you did well after you see that first goal score on a practice exam when you get the goal score, and make that list very prominent in your studies. Write them down on a flashcard or a piece of paper, or if you're only studying digitally, have it on like a digital sticky note on your monitor, or a real sticky note on your monitor if that's your thing. And just the key is have that list of 3 behaviors out on your desk until you're done with the exam. A great quote that I really try to live by is, we all need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. Are there things we need to still learn? For sure. I am a great example of that. But where would we be if we just executed 100% of the time on the stuff we already know? Like, let's just take a moment and really think about that for a second. The main ingredient in executing at that level repeatedly is reminding yourself to do it. That is I personally think the most important and least talked about thing when it comes to continuous high level execution. Are you continually reminding yourself what you need to do to produce that level of results? You probably have the motivation if you're listening to this in the first place. How many people are out there in human life who are listening to a podcast about the GMAT right now? Like you're definitely motivated. You may or may not have the willpower to execute on that motivation, but that's something you can definitely build over time. And I've already brought up twice some episodes I have that'll really, really help you with that. But if you forget to do it, all the positive intention and willpower in the world will not matter. So once you hit that goal score, figure out what your top three behaviors are, write them down, and have them in front of you as much as possible going forward until you're done. Think about that as your quote unquote success formula. Okay. That's your success formula. These are the things that if I keep doing them, there's a very high likelihood that I will continue to perform at a high level. The number four next most ideal situation is that you've never seen the goal score, but you've seen a score within 50 points of your goal. Perhaps, obviously, this is not ideal. It is definitely not ideal to not have seen the goal score, but there, uh, there will be those of you who are up against tight deadlines, and this is just going to be a reality of the situation that needs to be faced. And I don't think any of you are going to think you're going to get better results by ignoring reality than you will by like confronting reality. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I would hope that if you're going to B school, that you want it to know what the truth is. It's very helpful in business. Um, so this is not ideal because there's a reasonable amount of doubt that when you're heading into test day, you might not see the actual goal score, but it is still theoretically viable if you've seen a score within 50 points of your goal. Keep in mind there is a 20 point margin of error within the scoring algorithm itself. So what that means is on any given day, if you did like a quote unquote 655 level of performance, the score you receive could be a 645, a 655, or a 665. And then that's just the statistical margin of error. It has nothing to do with your actual performance on the test. Well, I can't say it has nothing to do, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean? That's just the algorithm doing its thing. So if you think about it, just a couple lucky guesses going your way, or a set of questions that really caters to your personal strengths, or a day where you just happen to be quote unquote in the zone and you can like push yourself to a higher level performance than you typically would, that could push your score up a significant amount, definitely up to 50 points, if not more. Um, some of you might have even seen score reports on your practice exams that have 50-point swings in them, even though you got the exact same number of questions right versus wrong. So let that blow your mind for a second. Just side note, if you're confused as to why and how that's even possible or how that happens, check out the video on our website. It's completely free and it's called How to Reach Your Dream GMAT Score in Half the Normal Time. It'll really help you understand how the scoring algorithm works and how it's different from other exams and how you can build a strategy to capitalize on it. Okay. It's a very misunderstood concept in the GMAT community, unfortunately. And there's a lot of people who seem really authoritative and really informed who do not understand that at all. So trying to help everybody out by making that free. Definitely give us feedback on it if you're like, hey, this sucked and I hated it. Still haven't gotten that feedback yet. So it can't be that horrible. If you're up against a deadline and you've seen a score within 50 points of your goal, it's totally possible you'll see that score on test day. It's just not nearly as likely. It is not nearly as likely as if you have at least seen it once on a practice exam. But you should be thinking like, hopefully I'll see something good. Now, keep in mind, you're banking on a quote unquote best case scenario now. So if you're going in having seen a score within 50 points of the goal, but not the goal, then you're really banking on a lot of things going well, like luck being on your side. And that's much more risky than not having to bank on that. So just be advised that there's still a strong likelihood you'll either have to keep studying and or apply with a score that's slightly lower than your goal, as long as it's not a terrible day and you hit like lower than your previous practice test. Although that can happen for a lot of reasons that the video I just mentioned on our website will help you avoid. But again, if that's a situation you're in and that's happened to you, reach out to us. We definitely specialize in reversing score drops. And in many cases, we're able to do that for people for free without even getting on a call. So yeah, please reach out if that's you. That was me back in the day, and I really needed help, and None of the resources that we've created for you here existed at that time, and that was really hard. So I would like to help you out and at least keep you from having to suffer the way I did. There are many cases where a score slightly lower than your goal is acceptable. For example, if you're about to miss a key deadline and you really want or need to get into school next year, many times this can work out, even if you don't see your ideal result. Keep in mind, a lot of people set their goal based on the median or average scores that schools publish. If it's a median, by definition, basically half the people who applied did and got in did not get that score. They got lower than that score. So keep that in mind. It doesn't mean you're not going to get in. Do your odds go down? Yes. But again, how often are situations ideal? And if you haven't done the work to force it to be ideal because there were situations out of your control, or you just didn't get your stuff together, which happens sometimes. Now this is the situation you're in, and you got to make the best of it. You got to become the kind of person who can make the best of a non-ideal situation. Or the alternative is just don't even try, which I don't think should be acceptable at all. Um, it's one of my favorite Michael Jordan quotes. I can accept losing, but I can't accept not trying. It's something to think about. Like Michael Jordan was arguably as good or better at his job than anyone has ever been at their respective job. So something to think about. Anyway, so not an ideal situation, but we're kind of getting into the nitty gritty, real of how this goes for people. And sometimes you set the target and it just doesn't go the way that you thought. More on that a little bit later. Those are some tips on how you can frame it mentally so that you can still get a good performance out of yourself on test day, and you're not going in there with your shoulders slumped over like kind of this self-fulfilling negative mindset prophecy of like, well, I'm not going to get this thing anyway because I haven't seen it on a practice test, so I'm not even going to give it my best effort. Like there's no place for that here. Okay. Have that pep talk with yourself. It's not even a pep talk. Pep talk's like the worst thing we could call that. It's putting yourself in touch with reality. It's getting outside your feelings and being like, hey, I'm doing a probability calculation on this right now. What are the actual odds? This could happen. It is possible that it could happen. Let me go in there with that mindset and let me do the absolute best that I can. That's what I recommend. Okay. The least ideal situation is that you haven't seen a score within 50 points on a practice exam, but a key deadline is approaching and or you have a significant break in studies coming up, let's say like more than a 1 month break where you're not going to be able to study. It's absolutely possible that you'll hit your goal. I've seen it happen a few times over the years, like 100-point gain on test day. But you should definitely accept and be real with yourself that that is not a high probability outcome. That is a very, very, very low odds of that happening, but it still could happen. And you should do the absolute best that you are humanly capable of doing in that kind of situation. So, in that type of situation, you may want to readjust your goal or your timeline. That might not be practical sometimes, but if it's practical, now's the time to make that judgment call. It can be really, really hard to estimate how long this is going to take because the GMAT's really different from other exams. And there are a lot of super uninformed talking heads in the industry who are either just don't have your best interests at heart, let's put it that way, or who got one person a great score one time, but their real success rate is like 3% of their clients hit their goal score. Just think about this, a little bit of insider knowledge for you, not throwing anybody under the bus here, but the vast majority of test prep companies, and I've worked for many of them, do not track success rate. They don't even have the metric. Think about that for a second. Please, please do your diligence before investing. Okay. Are they telling you some best case scenario, or is this a repeatable thing where there's a high likelihood that they're making a promise that they can actually keep for you personally? I've talked about this extensively in the past. A great podcast to listen to if you're interested in more depth on this is the How to Start Your GMAT Studies in 2024 episode. I think it is the very first episode from this year in January of 2024. So that's going to be like maybe 30 or 40 episodes back in the feed at this point. Definitely reach out if you have questions about who you should pick for your provider. And we'll do our best to help based on your specific bandwidth and budget and all the stuff that I break down for you in that episode. Now, if you are considering switching up the way that you've been studying, or you're not satisfied with the results that you're getting with your current provider and they're not delivering on the promises that they have made to you, we actually have a free service where you can book a call with us and we will help you figure that situation out. There's no obligation for the call. We don't charge for it. We're not going to pressure you into doing anything that we recommend. We're just going to give you our recommendation based on your situation that we will analyze very, very carefully. We'll do everything we can to help you out during that call. If that sounds good, you can just go to the website, register for the video I told you about how to reach your dream score in half the normal time. And then on the next page, you'll be able to tell us a little bit about your situation and book a call on the next couple of pages. We don't always take every single application, just FYI. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but this is just like a physical reality that we're up against with this. And we're trying our best to make this more available. This is just a situation we're in. It's not our long-term goal. Long-term, we'd like to be able to accept every application. We're working on that extremely hard. So yeah, feel free to DM us if for whatever reason that part of the process does not work out and you don't fit the criteria for booking an actual live call with us. We still want to help you, and we will, promise. Obviously, this is a really tough situation if you need to switch up your studies. I went through 2 different providers who were a major letdown, both of them, before I finally figured out what I needed to do to hit my goal. If you'd like to know a little bit more about my story, I do go into that a tiny bit in that video on the website that I've mentioned twice now. So I just want you to know you're not alone in that. I did not struggle academically as a young person. I put in the time, like I handled my stuff. It's not like I was showing up totally unprepared and then acing these exams. Although those people are out there and that's cool. I was friends with many of them throughout my academic life, and yeah, I mean that sounds really, really great. It just wasn't me. um, and yeah, I still struggled like crazy with the GMAT. It's just a very different exam, even though it looks like a totally normal exam on the surface. Um, so yeah, more on that in a second. Basically, to wrap this up, those are the situations you could be in. I tried to be as thorough as possible without being overwhelming or like unhelpful, and try to give you some good advice that I've seen work in at least 100 situations within each one of those buckets. If you have questions about your situation and you're still not sure what to do, like I said, shoot us a DM at the GMAT strategy on current social channels, and we'll be happy to help. A few additional thoughts that I just kind of was collecting as I was scripting this out for you. It's not specific to any one of these situations I just walked you through. And if you feel like you got what you needed from the episode and you haven't resonated with or enjoyed any of my like mindset discussions in past episodes, then definitely feel free to move on. It's nothing personal. It's all good. But I have found these thoughts that I'm about to share with you helpful over the many years I've been doing this. So number one, I think it's always a good idea to plan to take the exam again if needed. It's just helpful to know overall that this test that you're taking on this specific day is not a do or die situation. In a worst case scenario, if the power goes out or your proctor's super mean to you or there's someone losing consciousness because they drank too many Red Bulls before their CBEST exam or whatever they're taking in there with you, um, then you can always book another exam. Obviously, that's not ideal. Nobody wants to go in there and not see the score that you want to see, but I think that it's just a good idea. It's good general advice. For some of you, you'll perform better with that additional pressure of like, it's do or die. If I don't get this now, I'm done. And I can definitely relate to that mindset. But the vast majority of people do not actually perform better in those situations. So finding ways to quote unquote decrease the stakes mentally for yourself can be super, super helpful. Having said that, there is a 5-time limit on any 12-month period of taking the official GMAT. I meet plenty of people who do not know that, who just took a bunch of real official exams as practice, and now they're really up against the wall because they only have one more attempt that they can actually do. So please be advised. There's within any 12-month period, you can only take the exam 5 times, even though they recently deleted the lifetime limit. So like, yeah, theoretically, you could take the GMAT 100 times, but let's be real. Basically, nobody wants to do that. So that's thought number one. Thought number two, learning how to be transcendentally prepared is a really, really valuable skill. This is a great opportunity to develop it. In business, you'll be cooperating and competing with people basically until you exit the game. Your preparation is one of the things that will be, first of all, the most controllable aspect of how well you cooperate and how well you compete, and also have one of the largest effects on how well you cooperate and how well you compete. So you just ask yourself, is that a skill worth investing in? Even if you don't get to quote unquote perfection, whatever that means, what if you could increase your ability to be prepared by 10% through this process of preparing for the GMAT or by 20%? Like think about the compounding returns you could get from that in your professional life. So this is definitely a deep topic, becoming better and better at getting prepared for things. We've got multiple episodes about it that I've already discussed. But here's a really simple tactic that you can implement right away. Uh, just do a quick audit right now by asking yourself, what could I be doing better to prepare for this exam? Try it right now. My guess is there's at least one thing that you can think of right now that if you did it better, it would make a positive difference. I would recommend writing that down, even if you're on the go. You can bust out your phone or voice to text, like whatever, send yourself a text message or something like that. Email it to yourself and then write it down on a physical piece of paper and have it on the desk every single day when you're studying until you're done. And then keep repeating that process of asking yourself, what could I do better, at least on a weekly basis, at least once a week. Just set an alarm in your calendar that you use and just keep repeating that until you're bulletproof with your process of preparing. Very, very simple, very worthwhile thing to do. Next quick thought. It's good to realize that almost all humans are absolutely terrible at estimating how long things will take. There's actually quite a bit of research done on this. It's really funny to read the research studies if you're nerdy like that. Or I shouldn't say that, if you're into that kind of thing. This is a really important part of business is planning how long stuff is going to take, or at least estimating it. So realize you should, whenever possible, expect that all timelines that come from a person will be inaccurate. And only the most data-backed opinions can be trusted. And even then, change is the only constant. And so you should be mentally and emotionally prepared for that kind of situation simply because of natural variance. Now, all the advice I give you here, I try to make as data-backed as it can possibly be. But I mean, going back to our earlier conversation, like, what are the odds that I could predict what's going to happen for you exactly 100 with 100% accuracy? I mean, it's almost a 0% chance. Like even with the best intentions and the best data, maybe you're that outlier. Maybe you're that one of one. So it's not that you can't trust any advice. It's just that you want to be thinking, okay, if I'm telling myself that I think I'm going to be done with this in 3 months, maybe I should be thinking about what I should do if it's going to be six. You know, just recommending that you at least think through it. It'll make you better prepared and a better preparer of performances in general. Now, if it takes you longer than you thought, which it definitely took me like 4 times as long as I thought it was going to take, that's going to be tough emotionally. It was for me. It is for pretty much everybody who confronts that. So definitely express your feelings to caring people. It's highly advisable. But as soon as possible, try to reframe it as a good thing. Try to see it as an opportunity to become an even better professional, a better preparer, and a better teammate. We do not get stronger via a lack of resistance. It is the opposite. If you're feeling the resistance, that's your opportunity to get stronger, but you've got to accept the discomfort, maybe even embrace it, maybe even celebrate that you're uncomfortable. It's okay if the process doesn't feel how you want it to feel. It's an investment. That means it does not pay off now. It pays off later. Think about it this way. Do you want to be on a team with someone who has no adversity tolerance and who just complains and gives up because things are taking longer than expected? Is that the person you want next to you during a difficult presentation or a project? If the answer is no, then your best way of avoiding that situation is to not be that person. Always remember that the team is the leader. I'm going to say that again. The team is the leader. Like attracts like. If you've got one bad apple on your team, you're probably about to have three. They will try to convert everybody else to their negative way of thinking. Okay. If you have nothing but good apples, now you've got the potential to make something really great happen. So if you're struggling, you're not alone. I struggled insanely hard and I almost gave up 100 times. And thank goodness I didn't, because life on the other side of the exam has been at least 100 times better for me. And I think you're really going to like it too. So I hope that helps you decide when you're ready to take the GMAT. As always, my greatest hope is that this material will make your studies as easy and as painless as they can possibly be. If you want more tips and strategies for optimizing your performance on the exam, please head to our website, thegmatstrategy.com, which is linked in the description of this content, and check out our free video on how to reach your dream GMAT score in half the normal time. In the meantime, this is a regular show, so please subscribe and please stay positive and stay consistent with your studies. Talk to you all soon.